150 years ago, the business corporation was a relatively insignificant institution. Today, it is all-pervasive. Like the church, the monarchy, and the Communist Party in other times and places, the corporation is today's dominant institution. This documentary examines the nature, evolution, impacts, and possible futures of the modern business corporation. Initially given a narrow legal mandate, what has allowed today's corporation to achieve such extraordinary power and influence over our lives? We begin our inquiry as scandals threaten to trigger a wide debate about the lack of public control over big corporations.
I do think there is an overhang over the market of distrust. Listen, 95% or some percent, huge percentage of the business community are honest and reveal all their assets. And got compensation programs that are balanced, but there are some bad acts.
The media debate about the basic operating principles of the corporate world was quickly reduced to a game of follow the leader.
I still happen to think the United States is the greatest place in the world to invest. We have some shakeups that are going on because of a few bad apples.
Some people call me a bad apple. Well, I may be bruised, but I still taste sweet. Some people call me a bad apple, but I may be the sweetest apple on the tree.
These are not just a bunch of bad apples.
This is just a few bad apples.
It's not just a few bad apples.
We've got to get rid of the bad apples. You can start with Tyco.
Bad apples.
We know all about WorldCom.
Bad apples.
Xerox Corporation.
Bad apples.
Arthur Anderson.
Bad apples.
Enron, obviously.
Bad apples.
Kmart Corporation.
The fruit cart is getting a little more full.
I don't think it's just a few apples, unfortunately. I think this is the worst crisis of confidence in business.
What Fox Television told us was that we were just the people to be the investigators.
Do any stories you want, ask tough questions, and get answers. So we thought, this is great. This is a dream job. Fantastic. The very first thing they had us do was not to research stories, but to shoot this promo, which was The Investigators.
Uncovering the truth, getting results, protecting you.
And they had a film crew and a smoke machine, and we were silhouetted.
Investigative reporter Steve.
One of the first stories that Jane came up with was the revelation that most of the milk in the state of Florida and throughout much of the country was adulterated with the effects of bovine growth hormone.
With Monsanto, I didn't realize how effectively a corporation could work to get something on the marketplace. The levels of coordination they had to have. They had to get university professors into the fold. They had to get experts into the fold. They had to get reporters into the fold. They had to get the public into the fold. And of course the FDA, let's not leave them out. They had to get the federal regulators convinced that this was a fine and safe product to get it onto the marketplace. And they did that. They did that very, very well.
Posilac is the single most tested new product in history and is now available to you specifically so you can increase your profit potential.
The federal government basically rubber-stamped it before they put it on the marketplace. The longest test they did for human toxicity was 90 days on 30 rats, and then either Monsanto misreported the results to the FDA or the FDA didn't bother to look in depth at Monsanto's own studies.
The scientists within Health Canada looked very carefully at bovine growth hormone and came to very different conclusions than the Food and Drug Administration in the U.S. did.
Monsanto's engineered growth hormone did not comply with safety requirements. It could be absorbed by the body and therefore did have implications for human health. Mysteriously, that conclusion was deleted from the final published version of their report.
I personally was very concerned that there's a very serious problem of secrecy, conspiracy, and things of that nature. We have been pressured and coerced to pass drugs of questionable safety, including the RBST.
We wrote the story. We had it ready a week beforehand. They'd bought ads.
Farmers in the milk industry say it's safe, but studies suggest a link to cancer. Don't miss this special report from the investigators.
That Friday night before the Monday this series was to begin, the fax machine spit out a letter from this very high-priced lawyer in New York that Monsanto had hired It contained a lot of things that were just off the wall false, just demonstrably false. But if you didn't know the story and you didn't know how he had gone about producing it, would have scared you as a broadcaster, as a manager.
And they decided that they would pull the story and they would just check it one more time.
But the bottom line was that there was no factual errors in that story. Both sides had been heard from. Both sides had had an opportunity to speak.
1 week later, Monsanto sent the second letter, and this was even more strongly worded. And it said there will be dire consequences for Fox News if the story airs in Florida. And this time they freaked. They were afraid of being sued, and they were also afraid of losing advertising dollars at all of the stations owned by Rupert Murdoch, and he owned more television stations than any other group in America. I mean, that's 22 television stations. That's a lot of advertising dollars for Roundup, aspartame, NutraSweet, and other products.
You may recall that Jane Acree, a former reporter here, sued Fox 13 in a whistleblower lawsuit, claiming she was fired for refusing to distort her report. The appeals court today threw that case out, saying Ms. Acree had no whistleblower claim against the station based on news distortion. Fox 13 Vice President and General Manager Bob Linger says the station has been completely vindicated by the ruling.
What Fox neglected to report is this. Jane sued Fox under Florida's whistleblower statute, which protects those who try to prevent others from breaking the law. But her appeal court judges found that falsifying news isn't actually against the law. So they denied Jane her whistleblower status, overturned the case, and withdrew her $425,000 award. Canada and Europe have upheld the ban on RBGH, yet it remains hidden in much of the milk supply of the United States.
Sleeping in a motel in Brewer, Maine one night, I woke up with terrible hay fever and my eyes were burning, and I looked out of the river and there were great mounds of white foam going right down the river. And the next morning I got up and I said, my God, what was that happening last night? He said, oh, that's just the river. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, look, every night the paper companies send the stuff down the river. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, don't you understand? That's how we get rid of the effluent from the paper mills. Well, I knew at that time. I'd been in a business. I'd sold oil to the paper mills. I knew all the owners. I'd been in politics. I knew the people in the towns. I knew not one constituent of the paper mills wanted to have the river polluted. And yet here the river was being polluted. And it was more or less as if we created a doom machine. In our search for wealth and for prosperity, we created something that was going to destroy us.
The traders who are involved in the market are not guys whose moral fiber when it comes to environmental conditions are going to be rattled at all. They're seeing dollars and they're making money. Brokers don't stay away from copper because it violates their religious beliefs or their environmental policies. No. When you think about it, but it's fleeting. It really is a fleeting moment. It's like, you know, yeah, oh yeah, well, the town's being polluted down there in Peru, but hey, this guy needs to buy some copper. I'm getting paid a commission too. Our information that we receive does not include anything about the environmental conditions. Because until the environmental conditions become a commodity themselves or are being traded, then obviously we will not have anything to do with that. It doesn't come into our psyche at all. You know, it's so far away, and you hardly hear anything about it. I mean, keep in mind, I mean, there are things going on right in our backyards, for God's sake. We trade live hogs. I mean, there's so many pigs in the state of Carolina that is polluting the rivers, but how often do you find out about that?
We went through the garbage dump in the Dominican Republic. We always do this kind of stuff. We dig around. One day, we found a big pile of Nike's internal pricing documents. Nike assigns a time frame to each operation. They don't talk about minutes. They break the time frame into 10,000ths of a second. You get to the bottom of all 22 operations to give the workers 6.6 minutes to make the shirt. It's 70 cents an hour in the Dominican Republic. That's 6.6 minutes equals 8 cents. These are Nike's documents. That means the wages come to 0.3% of the retail price. This is the reality. It's the science of exploitation.
The Van Hoels There is no story of the Von Hools. If you're got me up this morning to talk about the Von Hools, and we're making an issue of the Von Hools as such, we could get it over with in a hurry.
In that fatal moment in the Oval Office, when Bill Clinton was confronting Monica and telling her it was over, he's interrupted with a call from, it turns out, Alfie Fahnholt. Alfie Fahnholt was very concerned that Al Gore had made a speech the day before saying that sugar companies were going to have to pay for the cleanup of the Everglades. So while Monica sat there in her tears, Bill Clinton spent 22 minutes on the phone reassuring Alfie Fahnholt that everything was okay, that they would be true and blue, and even that Al Gore guy, he's just saying that to get elected. Keep giving us money so Al can be president.
Nobody knows exactly what it costs to produce a pound of sugar in the Everglades, but it's the second most profitable crop to tobacco in the United States, and it has made the Von Hool family extraordinarily rich. The incredible thing is that for every pound of sugar grown in the Everglades, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of tons, the American taxpayer guarantees a price of 22 cents a pound, way above the world price of 7 cents a pound.
The sugar program is a combination of import quotas and a guarantee that the government will buy any surplus. It limits dramatically, it limits to almost nothing the amount of foreign sugar that's permitted to enter the U.S. That means if you need sugar in the U.S., you have to buy it from the U.S. sugar producers. And that results in the price being artificially raised. There's a shortage, usually, and so the U.S. price of sugar is higher than the world price.
So you can go to Canada and the price of sugar is 1/3 of the United States, or Mexico is 1/3 of the price in the United States. And they guarantee the price. So if there is too much sugar in the United States, the federal government will buy the sugar at the high price. It makes zero economic sense.
Here the country's running a $500 billion a year deficit, and we're subsidizing sugar production in the Everglades, which is damaging the same system that we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to repair. If you really think about it, it's nonsensical, it's even comical. If it wasn't so hideous, it really would be laughable.
The Von Hool family makes hundreds of millions of dollars, become very wealthy because of a government program. And there's no reason why the federal government should create a program to make the Von Hools richer. We're in effect subsidizing the Von Hools and hurting the American public buying products that have sugar in it.
One was the Republican, one was the Democrat. Alfie Fahnholt was the single largest contributor in Florida to the Clinton campaign, and his brother was the largest contributor to the Republican Bob Dole campaign. They had it covered either way.
What we're talking about is somewhere over $400,000 to various people in contributions to the Republican National Committee. They are putting down, in most of these cases, their occupation is with the Florida Crystals Corporation.
That's the Sugar Corporation.
Yeah. Well, that's them. Money doesn't decide every issue in politics, but most issues it plays a major part in. And if you're going to try to understand politics and why things happen the way they do in Washington, you have to, as they say, follow the money.
That's an industry.
How democratic is that?
It ain't. It is called free enterprise. It is free enterprise.
While Alfie and Pepe Von Hool get richer off government programs, the towns where they base their businesses sink deeper into poverty.
Well, this city of Belgrade is a labor community because we have a lot of agriculture in the area. Sugarcane being the largest, and it has a vast majority of ethnic backgrounds, or what's that word I'm looking for? Ethnicity.
When sugar barons like the Von Hools needed cheap labor, the U.S. made an exemption to immigration laws. Foreign workers were imported on a special visa to cut sugarcane for third world wages.
It really disappointed me. I'm saying, but you gotta see it. It's a system, you can't beat it.
Everybody from Jamaica come here. They come here to achieve something. They support them family.
Hard work, real hard work, you know. Sometimes our supervisors tell us, boys, it will be blood, sweat and tears, and it was.
I used to see people, man, go out cutting canes when I come to visit my cousin. They come back, lacerations, the canines, they cut them in the hand, chop them in the leg.
As a man cut off in thumb, clean as a man bust in knee. I see a lot of things going on in the field.
The figures show that every year there was an average of 10 workers killed in sugarcane work. When the government came down as part of their review of the Sugar Act to see that the workers were being paid properly, it found massive minimum wage violations throughout the sugar industry. This, we believe, cost the workers probably, certainly millions of dollars a year, maybe as much as $10 million a year.
There's a lot of time we know that we was short pay or, you know, are doing some work for a lot of lesser money more than what we supposed to work for, you know. But ain't nothing much we can do about it.
Yeah. Guys go out there and they work all day long. How much you made today? $35, $40. You got to work your behind off to make $50.
Although the Fanjuls deny wrongfully cutting wages and putting their workers' safety at risk, eventually mounting lawsuits and increasing scrutiny caused them to mechanize their sugar harvest. Many of the migrants who had come to work in their fields stayed in America, hoping for other opportunities, but they haven't made it very far.
Do you think it makes it difficult for the people living in that community to change their lives when they're raised in that community because they live in those conditions?
No. I mean, there's a lot of talent down there. A lot of talent. You know, this community here has produced several famous football players. Okay? Fred Taylor for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So that's the way they...
I mean, that's just one of the ways. Jesse Hester used to play for the Colts and the Raiders. His family lives right back here. I mean, that's just one of the things. I mean, and then there's other athletes, and there are a lot of talented people in this community.
It's hard to believe that just a few miles down the road from Belle Glade is one of the richest towns in America, Palm Beach. The contrast between the two communities is astounding.